So we are the London EYH group for the Arts Administration trip. My name is Bethany Notestein.
I'm Michelle Mazzi. I'm Arts Admin.
I'm Katie Smith, Arts Admin.
I'm Alana Belatsky, Theater Performance Major.
Kara Scarnati, Arts Admin.
Ann Hollick, Business Administration.
Stephanie Porter, Arts Admin.
And we are the group that traveled to London on January 6th to the 18th with Professor Todd Price and Kristen Krista. We made our trip together and we had a fantastic time, and this is a little bit more about what we did on our trip as opposed to, we were just exposing ourselves to different arts and cultures of the area, so here are some of the places that we visited.
First, we're going to talk about the London museums that we went to. The first one is the National Gallery. We had a private tour of all the classical and contemporary art.
The next is the Victoria and Albert Museum. Here we went on a private tour of the theatrical performance exhibition that was up. So we saw everything from original costumes, one of Andrew Lloyd Webber's original scores that he wrote, and also some models of different scenic designs that were produced for some of the West End productions.
We went on a little scavenger hunt around the city to compare an arts and midterm earned and unearned incomes, kind of like as a result of our major, and we went to the Natural History Museum with a lot of dinosaur bones, and the Science Museum also.
We then went to the British Museum and we had a British tea at 4 p.m. and ate off of a 3-tier platter with delicious scones.
We also went to the Tate Modern Museum where we saw a whole bunch of contemporary art pieces from the 1900s Impressionism period to the present day art.
Theater tours. Most arts and mid majors are combined with theater, art, and music, so we did a lot of theater tours. One of the places that we went to was the National Theater, and we saw 3 shows there.
We then went to the Royal Opera House, and we got to see where the Queen sat. She has her own little booth with her seal on it, and we had a private tour of that too, and we saw a couple ballets, which you'll hear about later, and there's also operas performed there.
The next was a really interesting experience. We got to go to the Bush Theater, and we got to have a panel discussion with some of the heads of departments such as marketing, development, and some of the heads of production of the area. We got to ask them basically questions on items that we've learned in class and how they're applying it to their work in the Bush Theater and how that compares to how theaters run in the United States.
We went to the Arcola Theater, which is probably comparable to our off-Broadway type theater, and it's kind of an industrial-like space, and like we kind of learned about like the challenges they have to work with there and kind of like how they struggle and how they're developing as well.
Next, we also visited the Globe Theater for a walkthrough tour. It's Shakespeare's theater where many of his plays were performed there. It's actually a replica of the original Shakespeare theater.
So we saw 5 theatrical productions while we were there. The first one we saw was the Stephen Golaski plays, which was a one-man show about his ups and downs of his life.
We then saw Our Class, which was produced at the National Theater, and it told the stories of Catholic and Jewish children living in Poland from 1925 till now.
Our big musical was Oliver, which was a really great production of it, really similar, like their West End is comparable to our Broadway, and it was a really elaborate, lots of like sets and production and all kinds of stuff, so that was our big show for that.
We then saw War Horse, which is a little story about a boy and his horse, and it was really cool because they used puppets as the horses. So, and it's also coming to New York. It's very exciting.
And we saw it first.
The next production that we saw was Pains of Youth, which was also produced at the National Theater in one of their black box-esque theaters. It was a very obscure production that we didn't quite understand at the moment, but we worked our way through it and we researched some references to get some better understanding of this very different production. There were also, we branched out on some of our free time that we had and figured we're in London, we might as well go see some more theater, that's what we're there to see. So between the 8 of us that went on the trip, we saw things such as Dirty Dancing, Billy Elliot, Blood Brothers, Grease. We went to see some opera. We went to the Royal Opera House to see Le Partenaire and Beatrix Potter, the ballet, as well as Romeo and Juliet, the ballet.
Tourist attractions. We were lucky to have a lot of free time on our trip, so we did a bunch of things. one of the things we did was Kensington Palace, and this is where Princess Diana used to live. Now it's a museum.
The next iconic location we visited was the Westminster Abbey. Unfortunately, we could not take pictures within, so you have to see the outside. But it was great because once you entered, it was a very cultural friendly. You got to take an audio tour of any type of language to assist with wherever you were coming from to visit the Abbey.
We went to Buckingham Palace to see the palace itself and the changing of the guard, which is like a daily routine. And they come in on horseback, and there's the royal band plays. It's a very elaborate display. And the palace itself is huge, and you see it from the front, and then you keep walking on the side and realize it goes back and back for like miles, and you're like, wow, the Queen of England lives in there. So it was kind of a really surreal experience.
As Alana mentioned before, we had a traditional British experience by having high tea at the British Museum, which was a very memorable experience for many of us.
On one of our first days, we took a bus tour around London, and one of the first things we got to see was Big Ben and Parliament.
Another one of our scavenger hunt-esque trips that we went on is we were split into pairs and had to look for different schools comparable to Wagner that had arts programs or theater programs. So we split off and toured London. I know myself and Stephanie, my teammate, spent roughly an hour on a public bus because we didn't exactly know where we were going. But it was a really great experience, and we got to speak with some students and get information on the different schools that we were at.
We decided to do a little shopping at Harrods. It's almost like the Macy's of here, but except it has a lot more high fashion stores and name brands.
Also for another attraction we went to was St. Paul's Cathedral, one of the main sites. The cafe on the bottom of it was very famous, well known for its food, so we had lunch there a couple of days as well.
Here are the New York trips that we went on to compare them to London. The first one is the Neue Gallery. It's an art gallery that displays German art and exhibitions, and it's also related to one of the shows we saw called Pains of Youth, which we talked about before.
We then visited the Roundabout Theater, which is the leading nonprofit company based in New York City, and we met with the education associate there and a few interns.
And next we visited the New Museum, and the New Museum is located in Soho, and it's basically new works by American and international artists with an emphasis on innovation. And the building actually is really interesting. That's what you see when you look outside.
So that's basically just the different sites that we saw. And the entire time that we were on the trip, as well as when we returned here, it was basically a comparison of different items that we saw within London and then here at home. So on the trips that we went to, we basically looked for the elements we sought out in London and compared the two. And our final project for the class actually was we profiled an organization here in the States and compared it to how organizations were run in London. And basically just to see, can we take anything from London? Could London possibly learn anything from us? And just an analysis of how the arts functions across the globe. So thank you.